Today we'll be discussing the basics of how to safely and legally burn woody debris piles. Before we can burn a pile, we need to build a pile first. Cut living wood should be dried for at least 60 days to allow for clean burning. For residential piles, they should be no larger than 4 foot by 4 foot by 4 foot. For less smoky burns, fuel should be consolidated and not have a lot of air gaps in the pile, and the material should be homogenized, meaning small material should be all the way through along with kind of heavier wood. Piles should also have vertical sides to help them burn cleaner. Piles should not be within 15 feet of buildings, infrastructure, mature trees, or anything else you want impacted from the heat of the fire. Remember, heat rises, so do not place your pile directly below anything that you don't want impacted from the fire. Piles should be placed on the flattest ground possible. When it is not possible to place piles on flat ground, place the material perpendicular to the slope to minimize rollout or the material shifting when the pile's burning down. A cup trench can be built when necessary to help minimize hot burning logs rollout as the pile shifts. We build cup trenches on the hills so that when these piles are burning down, any shifting material out of them will be caught by the cup trench. It's important to make the cup trench deep enough to catch any rolling material that shifts out of the pile into the cup trench. Dry, flammable material should be removed at least 5 feet around the pile. That material can be placed on the pile once it's been removed. Wax paper can be placed on top of the pile to keep it dry during the rain, to allow burning in wetter conditions. Make sure you secure the paper with logs. It needs to be secured during winter storms and not blow away. Before burning piles, you need to acquire 2 different permits to legally burn. One from your air quality district and one from your responsible fire district. Here in Sonoma County, we have 2 air quality districts your property might fall under. They are the Bay Area Air Quality Management District and the Northern Sonoma County Air Pollutant Control District. You must first know whose responsibility area you are under. If you are under state responsibility area, CAL FIRE is your oversight district. The CAL FIRE residential pile burn or LE62A permit can be acquired online. It's important to reach out to your fire district to make them informed about the piles you will be burning prior to burning. If you are under a local responsibility area, you are usually under a county or a municipal fire district. Each of these will have different permits based on your fire district's requirements. It's important to reach out to your fire district to find out what those requirements are and to let them know of the fire projects you will be working on. Now that we have our pile built and we have all of the appropriate permits, we need to do one last thing before we are able to burn this pile. And that's going over the checklist for the day of the burn. Prior to burning, you must call your local air quality control district to find out if it is a permissible burn day. That can either be done through a hotline or online, depending on your air quality district. It's important to let your fire district or your local dispatch know when you will be burning. Next, you will need to make sure you are wearing all of the appropriate personal protection equipment. Leather work boots, natural material clothing, either cotton or jean pants or other natural fibers, leather gloves, eye protection, which can be sunglasses, prescription, or safety glasses. It's important to also avoid wearing any synthetic material that may melt and cause injuries if exposed to too much heat. You should not be starting burning any earlier than 10 a.m. as advised by your air quality district. This allows any inversion layer to lift, allowing smoke to disperse and not consolidate in any area. No material should be added to the pile, or new piles should not be lit after 3 p.m. This will help smoke disperse and allow for cleaner air. One other thing we think is good at Pepperwood is to notify your neighbors before burning. Although it may not be a requirement in your permit, we think it's a good idea to let the folks around you know that they may be seeing smoke in the air and you have all the appropriate pieces in line to do that. It's also important to follow the particular requirements in your burn permit. Generally, you should not be burning if wind speeds exceed 8 miles per hour, if relative humidity is below 30%, or if temperatures are above 80 degrees. It's also important to have a water source and a metal hand tool nearby before burning. Also, before burning, if your piles are not freshly made, it's important to give your pile a kick or a fluffing of the material to make sure any critters are dispersed before you light it. An adult is required to be in attendance, and we encourage you to invite your friends and bring others to come and light the piles with you. It can be an enjoyable experience, although it is a lot of work and there are safety requirements. It's a good opportunity to expose neighbors, friends to the pile burning process and show that it can be done safely and appropriately to reduce fuels for future wildfires in your area. When burning on warmer days, sometimes it can be helpful to create a wet line around your pile. Simply what that means is just putting some water down on the ground around the pile. That'll help to minimize pile creep on these warmer days like we're burning today. When it's possible on warmer days like today, we will be igniting the pile from the top. This will allow for this pile to burn with minimal smoke and allow them to be cleaner. Here at Pepperwood, we like to use either the wax paper, dry material such as dry grass around us as our starting. You can start the pile the same way you would start a typical campfire, but we're starting this pile at the top. As we've been lighting these piles, we've also been monitoring to make sure that the piles are not creeping beyond the footprint and extinguishing that creep when appropriate. We've been also monitoring the piles to make sure that as they burn down, they don't shift and we don't get any of the hot logs rolling or shifting outside of the pile, potentially starting a smaller fire around that rollout. We've also been watching as the piles burn down to find the appropriate time to turn in or consolidate the piles. Once the pile is cool enough that you can comfortably get up to the pile, it's important to turn in the unburnt material into the center of the hot burning pile. That allows the material to burn down more completely, reducing the effort you need to extinguish the pile. Your best option for extinguishing your piles is to let them burn down entirely to ash and coal. The more your pile is able to burn down, the less extinguishing you need to do. However, there are plenty of circumstances that require extinguishing of the pile. This can be done through A, a lot of water, or B, through mixing soil and utilizing soil moisture and dry mopping the pile to extinguish it. Oftentimes, we don't have water in scenarios where we're burning in more remote areas. However, we can utilize the dry mopping technique by mixing in the hot coals and ash with the soil. When burning in winter, fall, and early spring, the soil has a lot of moisture in it, and we can utilize that to help extinguish the pile. It's important to pull up some of that soil from the bottom, mix it in thoroughly to mix in the ash, the soil, and the charcoal to make a homogenized color. We're also grabbing in some soil from outside of the pile ring, and that might bring in some of the existing seed bank that did not burn from the pile. This will help the pile scar recover faster with things growing inside of it. If you do have access to some water, it can be useful to make a mud pit. And instead of pouring that water directly on the hot coals, you can pull a small section off to the side where the ground is cool and add a little bit of water to it to make a muddy slurry. The muddy slurry can be used to mix into the coals and ash of the pile. The muddy slurry can also be used to help extinguish some remaining hot logs. First, scrape all of the hot coals off of the log. The woody material can then be smothered in the mud. This is best done with leather gloves, so you can get the mud in all of the nooks and crannies of the hot wood, helping it cool down rapidly. Now is a good time to re-observe your pile, and you can see some areas are still smoking where they have been hot. So you can go back to mixing your piles in some areas that still have some heat. When moving hot coals around, it's important to be aware of where they're rolling and that they're not moving too far outside of the pile burn scar, potentially catching some other vegetation on fire. Once you feel like your piles have been thoroughly mixed and your remaining dead wood has been cooled by mud, it's important to check. This can be done by removing your glove and using the back of your hand to trace the ground for heat. Around the outside of the pile, it is important to move your hand closely on the ground, reaching down a little bit further than the surface level of fire. So moving it on the ground so that you can move any loose dirt to feel if there's heat subsurface. Once you feel like the pile has been appropriately checked for heat, you can now check your hot logs to see if your mud method has removed the heat. It will still be warm to touch. However, it should not be too hot that you cannot leave your hand in one space without burning yourself. Where that log might have been smoldering for 24 hours or longer, covering it in mud allows us to extinguish it within 10 or so minutes. Now that we've extinguished our hot wood and made sure that our coals and ash are cool to touch, we have successfully extinguished the pile. However, our day does not end here. It's important to continue to check your piles up to 10 days into the future. And although we had appropriate burn conditions today, future weather might bring hotter temperatures, less relative humidity, and higher wind speeds. So we must come back and check our piles at least this evening, the following day in the peak of the heat, and potentially up to 10 days in the future. Checking piles at night can be very helpful because any ember glow becomes very obvious. So remember to bring hand tools and a water source, if accessible, with you when you check on your piles. Oftentimes, I like to burn when I know moisture is coming. So burning the day before or the day when rain starts. Once we know we have a big storm coming and a lot of rain coming, that can reassure our confidence that the pile will not reignite. However, just because the forecast predicts rain doesn't mean it relieves us from making sure that the pile is completely extinguished. So remember to continue to check on your piles in days after burning.